مجيد. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم بك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك المصير. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا.
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله.
You're listening to Peterborough's community radio, Salam Radio. Salam Radio, 106.2 FM.
Good afternoon. You are listening to Keep Women Talking on Salam Radio 106.2 FM. I'm Mandy. I'm from Peterborough Women's Aid and I am your host this afternoon. I am joined by my co-host Sue. Hello Sue, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
I'm good, thank you. Oh, straight away.
I've heard that there's been lots going on at Peterborough Women's Aid. Can you tell us, fill us in what's been going on the last 2 weeks?
There has been a lot going on over the last 2 weeks. So we are getting super busy for Christmas. We've had loads of donations come in, really lovely, kind donations for the women and children we work with. So we are sorting all of those out, getting ready to play Father Christmas.
Nice job to have, though.
Oh, it's a lovely job. I've done a couple of interviews actually for Greatest Hits Radio. So I did one talking about the new law around stalking.
Oh.
And some new sanctions that the police can impose on stalkers. And they've introduced a mandatory prison term of 5 years.
So all good news then.
Yeah, and also if you're a victim of stalking, you now have the right to know who your stalker is.
Oh, okay.
And that wasn't the thing. So they just wanted really to know.
So the police could find out who it was, but they weren't allowed to share that information with you.
Exactly. And now they can. Which obviously, if you're a victim of stalking, that information is vital to know, isn't it? To keep yourself safe.
Well, that's it. And I think otherwise it'd make you even more anxious about who you're around and who's, possibly following you, whether it's someone you know, whether it's a stranger.
Yeah, so some really good legislation around stalking's been introduced. I also did an interview on spiking.
Oh, it's that time of year, isn't it? I would imagine. I've got no idea, but I would imagine that the rates of spiking increase at this time of year.
Yeah, and excuse me, and that spiking is now also a criminal offence in itself, because it never has been, which means that police don't have any data on how prevalent it is. So the fact that now someone can be charged with a spiking offence means that they can gather the information to know, how much of it is going on. So again, some really good changes in legislation. What else have we been up to? Also, we had some volunteers from Bauer Media come in. They gave us some volunteering time and they revamped our garden at Anne's house.
Oh, amazing.
So that looks fabulous.
I know you were a bit worried about it because it was quite overgrown, wasn't it?
It was very overgrown. And we're not gardeners at PWA. Well, some of us aren't anyway. Me and you did this. We went into Thomas Deakin Academy, didn't we? And we did some assemblies for, what year?
They
were year 10.
10?
First ever assemblies for year 10, wasn't it? And we looked at stuff around domestic abuse, around healthy relationships.
But it was specifically aimed at their age group, wasn't it? So rather than talking about adult relationships, we were talking about teenage relationships. So we could actually relate to it a lot better.
And we talked about all the challenges, I suppose, of being a young person in a relationship and how that can turn into abuse. And we talked about Snapchat and Instagram and the likes of influencers that maybe have really misogynistic views. So, some really good sessions at Thomas Deakin.
Yeah, and they were all really well engaged as well. They were all really interested in that, which is brilliant.
They were, yeah. We also had our first ever survivor engagement board at PWA.
Which is?
So what we want to do is we want to have the survivors that we've supported co-design our work. because it's really important that they tell us, one, what was good about our work, but also what was missing or what could have been done better, or there's a gap there, have you thought about doing this group, or have you thought about running?
During the process, X, Y and Z would have been really handy to have, or this signposting to another organisation would have been really useful, so they can give you all that feedback.
Yeah. So that was a real, it was a really successful group, actually. We had a very large number of survivors come and talk to us about their experiences and feedback into PWA, so loved that.
Perfect. 'Cause it could be quite hard for them to come back and provide that feedback.
Yeah.
It's a time in their lives which is obviously very stressful, very traumatic in itself.
Yeah.
So for them to come back is really, really brave of them.
Oh, it is.
And really helps the organisation as a whole.
Yeah, it does. We've been to Peterborough Hospital. We had some stands because we are a bit over halfway through the 16 days of activism against violence and women and girls. It's a bit of a mouthful. And we were there to promote our services, and we had a focus on honour-based abuse and female genital mutilation on those stalls.
Does that happen every year, Mandy?
Yes, it does. The 16 days of activism. And we try, every year there's a theme, and we at PWA try to do something within those 16 days. We had some staff that went to the white ribbon raising at the church hall? Not the church hall, the town hall. And the white ribbon is all about engaging with men when it comes to domestic abuse, and empowering men to kind of say, this isn't right, calling each other out.
For them to challenge things that they see and hear.
Yeah. So in summary, it's been a really busy 2 weeks.
Sounds like it has been. It sounds like you've been here, there and everywhere.
Yeah, we have. And I just want to promote something, if I may, as well. So next Monday, the 16th of December, from 10 till 12, we have our first ethnically diverse coffee morning. And we're doing this in association with the Raham Project, Culture Connect and Peterborough Women's Network.
And where's that being held?
At Anne's house, 3234 Cromwell Road. And the reason we're doing this is because, one, we want to raise awareness of what we do, but we also know that women from minority communities are not as likely to come forward and access help. And even if they're not a victim of domestic abuse, some women in those communities feel really isolated.
So it's for any woman within the ethnically diverse communities can attend that event. Yes. What time was it again, Mandy?
It's 10 till 12 next Monday, and I will keep talking about it on the show. Okay,
so is it just a coffee and a chat?
It's coffee and a chat. We're going to do some wellbeing exercises.
Oh, nice.
Optional. If people just want to come and have coffee and a chat, and there is going to be food.
Oh, I might have to turn up
I'm
for
there.
That one.
Okay, so today's show, we are going to be looking at the impact of domestic abuse on children. Sorry, so quite a heavy subject.
Be a really difficult.
It's going to be a difficult one, and again, this all comes with a trigger warning. We will let you know if we feel that maybe you shouldn't have your kids listening while we're talking about this. But to counteract this very heavy subject, we have our question of the day. So it's cold, it's rainy, and it's windy, and it's horrible. So this is the time of year where you might just want to snuggle in. So the question of the day is, what is your favourite comfort food?
So I found this really hard.
Come on, Sue, what is your favourite comfort food?
I've been trying to think about this the last few days, and I just cannot narrow it down. I'm a real foodie. And I was thinking, sometimes it's just chocolate. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a good curry. Sometimes it's a good Chinese. Sometimes it's a stew. So I find it really hard. And I think it depends on my mood, what I'm feeling like at that time, and just what I fancy.
Yeah.
What about you? Have you got anything in particular?
One word: mash. I have mash with curry.
Mashed potato, as
mashed potato. I have it mashed with curry, mashed with lasagna, mash and curry is delicious. I have mash. If I could have mash with every meal, well, actually, I near enough do, I would. I love
Slightly
mash.
obsessed with mash, then.
Yeah, I just love it. And my partner, who cooks these most fabulous curries and lasagnas, he says, "What do you want with it?" Mash.
That's the strangest thing I've ever heard.
Oh.
I've never heard anyone having mash with everything.
Anyway, so that is, to lighten the mood a little bit today, that is our question of the day. What is your favourite comfort food? So you can call us and talk about your favourite comfort food, which is 01733 602 133. You can text us on 07411 191 062, or if you are one of our listeners, do we have more than one? I don't know, maybe. You can comment on our Facebook, YouTube, X or Twitch. So we're asking you, what is your favourite comfort food? And we can't wait to hear.
Can't be any much stranger than mash with everything.
Okay, so you are listening to Keep Women Talking on Salam FM, and today we are focusing on the impact of domestic abuse on children. So to put this in a little bit of context, it's only been since January 2022 where children are actually regarded as victims of domestic abuse. So they are victims if they are in the same residence and if they are present or not.
And I think that's a really important point, because very often we've had women that have come to us and have said, "Oh, it's okay, they haven't seen anything." And it's not necessarily that they've seen anything, but they've probably heard something, or they feel something within the atmosphere within the house. And I think just being in a household where there is domestic abuse, there is a constant atmosphere of tension within that house, because the woman very often is walking on eggshells permanently. And children are very receptive to those sorts of feelings.
And I think because children now are victims, I talked about this with stalking and spiking earlier, it actually gives us a better picture of the situation out there, doesn't it? That we can actually say, yes, there's a victim of domestic abuse, male or female, in the house, but actually there's 3 others there because they've got 3 kids. So that makes 4 victims. So in terms of shaping the support that's needed, we need this data, don't we, to know what is going on.
It does, and then it gives us the evidence and the strength to be able to provide services for not just the victim or the direct victim of the domestic abuse, but the children that were involved in that household as well.
It does. So I am going to be, Sue is our expert at working with children and young people that have been affected by domestic abuse. So she's going to be talking about some of her experiences and the impact that domestic abuse has on children and young people. But I just want to say that if you are or have been affected by the things we're talking about, you can reach out to Peterborough Women's Aid on 01733 894 964, or go on our website, which is www.peterborough.womensaid.co.uk. So, Sue, do you want to, I suppose, begin at the beginning, which is quite obvious, isn't it? Talk us through the impact on babies, or even before that.
Well, that's it. It very much starts from when that child is in the womb, because when they're inside the mum's in a domestic abuse situation, the hormones and everything that's going through mum's system is obviously passed through to that child within the womb. So if you're in a heightened state for a long, long period of time, you have a hormone called cortisol, which is one of the main stress hormones, and that will be whizzing around the mum's body, and that eventually obviously gets fed into the child's body. And that can have a massive effect on mum and on the baby. So it can affect fetal development.
Wow.
So it can cause the baby to have quite slow development within the womb. And then it can suppress mum's immune system. So she obviously becomes more vulnerable in terms of bacteria and bugs and coughs, colds and various, other things that are going around that they may catch. It can affect blood sugar. You can get high blood pressure. Interestingly, which I didn't know until I was doing a little bit of research, was that it can actually decrease bone density and muscle tissue, which I never would have thought of.
And
before.
this is all down to this cortisol,
Yes.
because the victim is in a high sense of stress and anxiety.
That's
that hormone is
and it's the
whizzing.
long-term effects
Okay.
of having all these stress hormones in your body for over a long period of time. You know, it's normal to get spikes because obviously we all know if we get afraid or something happens, then your adrenaline shoots up and we might feel nervous and anxious in certain situations. But it's the long-term impacts that can have such a huge effect on mum and obviously the baby that they're carrying at that time.
Wow. So you're saying that if a victim is pregnant and is being abused, that baby will be affected in some
It's
way.
already having an impact on that child. And eventually it can impair cognitive function as well. And that, so it can actually damage brain cells. It may mean that you can't learn and focus as well. So it can have a massive, massive impact.
Wow. I just wanted to, talking about babies in the womb and domestic abuse, there is midwives are trained in domestic abuse,
Yes.
aren't they? And there is they have to, so it's mandatory, isn't it?
It
that
is.
when they work with women who are pregnant, that they ask the question around domestic abuse and a healthy relationship, and they do this away from the man,
Yes.
basically,
Yeah.
to give that
And
person.
in fact, any medical professional always have awareness of domestic abuse. They've always had training in it. So very often they're one of the first ports of call for a lot of women in the community to access support and help.
So we are saying to any pregnant women out there who are in an abusive relationship that actually medical, midwives, GPs, they are used to
Yeah,
people
health
disclosing.
visitors.
They're safe people to disclose to. They know what to do. So that's our kind of message, isn't it? To encourage.
Yes.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I'm guessing you've told me all about this cortisol's whizzing through. It's having all of these, quite horrible effects on a baby in the womb.
Yeah.
Does that then lead to things like miscarriage and,
It can do, definitely.
okay.
And that. I don't know. I'm not a medical trained
No,
person.
no.
But I would imagine that there is an increased risk of miscarriage in those circumstances.
And we also know, don't we, that when a woman is pregnant, the risk of being a victim of domestic abuse increases.
It does. Can you explain that a bit more, Mandy?
So we know that domestic abuse is very much around control. So it's about the perpetrator having control of the victim. Now, when a woman is pregnant, he loses an element of control because he can't control that. And also, the woman is now focusing on herself and the baby a lot more than focusing on him. So again, he's lost
so her
that element.
attention's moved away from him to a point, because when you're in that situation, out of the fear and the consequences that may come from that, it doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying, that their focus becomes on the baby grown inside of them.
Yeah. And he feels like he's losing an element of control. So the risk can go up when a victim becomes pregnant.
So does that mean that the behaviours that you see from a perpetrator increase during that time?
They can get more intense. They want to have more control. They want to isolate. Now, we have also known victims, long-term victims of domestic abuse, to get pregnant one after the other, after the other, after the other. Now, I've used the wrong language there, actually, when I say get pregnant. What I'm saying is that the perpetrator can also use multiple pregnancies as a way to control a victim too.
Right, okay.
So if you're pregnant, or if you have a young person, a baby to look after, where are you?
At home.
You're at
generally.
home. Exactly. So there we go. That's a form of isolation straight away. So,
And I suppose if there's difficulties that come with that pregnancy as well, again, more reasons for you to be at home, perhaps not going out in the community quite so much.
yeah.
You perhaps need bed rest.
And if you think about a victim of abuse who is pregnant, who is very vulnerable, who is very controlled, very scared, and then she has the baby and the perpetrator says, oh, I love this, let's have another one, the likelihood is she is absolutely petrified and will say, yeah, okay, let's do that. And that can be such control for years of her life, because like you say, she's now at home, she's looking after the children, she can't work, she can't see people, she can't get a job. You know, it's a huge...
I think we spoke last week, that can come under that coercive control element, where they use the fear and the threats to keep the control over somebody.
Definitely. Okay, before we move on to the next, so we've been talking about babies in the womb and the impacts that domestic abuse can have on those babies. I just want to repeat our helpline number, which is Peterborough Women's Aid. It's 01733 894 964. So if anything we've talked about has affected you, please do get in touch and we can offer you support. I also want to remind you of our question this week, which is a little bit lighthearted because the subject is so heavy. We are asking you, what is your favourite comfort food? Sue literally has a long list.
I like food.
I have one. Mine is mashed potato on everything. So
Still can't get over that.
please do call us. Tell us about your favourite comfort food. It's cold, it's windy, it's horrible. Call us on 01733 602 133. Please do text us. 074 111 91062, or if you are watching us on Facebook or YouTube, X or Twitch, you can comment there. We look forward to hearing from you. What is your favourite comfort food? Okay, Sue. So let's move on. We've talked about babies in the womb and the effects of domestic abuse.
Yeah, so thinking about very young children, obviously they won't necessarily have the language to explain what they've experienced, and very often in young children, experiences are stored as a sensory experience. So it might well be that there's a smell, or there's a sound, or an action that is actually a trigger for them in a certain type of behaviour. And the child won't be able to explain this. As a parent, you may not be able to explain what's happened, but they will be remembering an experience through their senses.
Wow, is all I can say to that.
It's quite a thought, isn't it? So they may be nothing that we can recognise as a trigger, but there may well be that there was something that a smell or a door banging, for example, that they remember feeling fear or anxiety in that moment, and they've associated that smell or that noise or that action with that fear.
And this is really difficult because mum isn't going to know, is she? She's not going to know. And they're so little that they can't describe that to mum either, what's going on.
That's it. And even as the child gets older, that trigger may well still be within their sensory experience, but they still won't be able to explain it, because as they get older, they can't remember what happened necessarily. But for some reason, a certain sound, a certain smell, a certain action can make them react in a certain way, and they've got no idea why. So that in itself can become quite frightening for a child, because they don't understand what's happening. And we talked about different behaviours and different responses due to a traumatic event or events. These vary widely.
Okay.
So it can be anything from acting out an aggressive behaviour to children who get very withdrawn, freeze even. We've had a young child before who came to Refuge. She was probably about 18 months old when she came to us. And we'd have her in play sessions with other children and she'd be absolutely fine. And then all of a sudden, she would just freeze. So she would stare into space, she wouldn't move, she wouldn't engage. And the only thing we could put this down to was that when the noise level got to a certain amount, or another child shouted, she would have this automatic response of just freezing and not engaging, not reacting in any way, because I think that was the way that she had learnt to deal with those situations.
So, I mean, that's really difficult to hear, isn't it? So a child who has witnessed domestic abuse and the noise level has obviously been really, really high. She's now safe. She's in the refuge. But she's still experiencing that trauma. It's still there, isn't it?
That trigger is still there. Still there. And it did lessen over time. Let's look at the positive. Over time, she'd obviously been removed from that situation where we know there was a lot of verbal abuse, a lot of shouting, a lot of raised voices within the household. After she came to refuge over a period of probably 6 to 9 months, those instances of her freezing did lessen. Okay. And hopefully as she continued to get older, they will lessen even further as she begins to feel more safe and more secure in her environment and the people that she's around.
And that is what it's all about then, Sue, isn't it? This coming into a refuge and having that safe and secure, comfortable environment as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We do have a comment on Facebook from Sharon. She says, listening to how children are affected by domestic abuse, it becomes even more apparent how difficult it must be to identify triggers and help children manage those as well.
It is. It's really, really hard to manage triggers. I know it's something that with the work that we do in schools, we try and get the children to recognise the emotion within themselves, and that can be a feeling within the body, and learn them teach them techniques to try and manage those big emotions that they might not necessarily, like Sharon says, be able to explain.
So we are going to go to an ad break in a second, but when we come back, what I'm really interested in is these techniques and how you work with children to to get through this trauma as well. Okay, so we will catch you in a couple of minutes.
Stay tuned to Salam Radio after this short ad break.
Bite into something wonderfully tasty at Big Mouth, 349 Lincoln Road in Peterborough. Eating in for takeaway or delivery, Big Mouth now have a delicious new menu full of all your favourites. Crispy fried chicken, juicy smashed burgers, finger-licking piri-piri chicken, handmade pizzas, quality doner meat and so much more. So visit the family-friendly Big Mouth restaurant for fantastically fresh food. Call 01733 201020 or visit getbigmouthonline.com.
Need a taxi that won't break the bank? Amar Cabs offers safe local rides at affordable prices, starting at £3.99. Get to Heathrow for £120 and London Stansted or London Luton for just £88. Private school and executive business class drop-offs are also available. Booking is easy. Go to www.amarcabs.com and download our app on Android or iOS or call 01733 555 888. Wherever you're headed, Amar Cabs is just a tap away with reliable, affordable rides starting at just £3.99.
Craving authentic Desi flavors? Look no further than Desi Restaurant. From midday until 1 in the morning, enjoy our homemade specialties that will transport your taste buds. Indulge in tantalizing papri chaat and savor the rich Chersi Kadahi. Treat your friends to our fresh 1 kilogram Chersi lamb handi. Plus, get 2 12-inch pizzas for $11.95. Located at 298 Lincoln Road, we deliver from lunchtime until 1 a.m. Call 01733 555 795 now to order and experience Desi Restaurant's flavors.
Are you a savvy shopper searching for the best food deals? Look no further. Adams Cash and Carry can help you save big. We're not just a food wholesaler for takeaways and restaurants. We also welcome household customers at our warehouse in Westwood, Peterborough. Visit our website and enjoy wholesale prices on everything from drinks to flour, rice to burgers and much more. To shop, go online and collect in store. Visit adamscashandcarry.co.uk today to start your savings spree.
Satisfy your cravings at Ibrahimi Buffet Restaurant. Enjoy a tantalising variety of Chinese, Italian, Pakistani and comfort food favourites, from starters to desserts. Kids under 5 dine for free, so bring the whole family to our restaurant at 63 Sycamore Avenue. Open every day from 5 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Call us on 01733 313131 or book online to reserve your table. Ibrahimi-restaurant.co.uk. Every bite is a delight at Ibrahimi Buffet Restaurant.
It's time to protect yourself against COVID-19 and the flu. If you or a family member are eligible for a vaccine this winter, then you can easily book an appointment or find a walk-in clinic online. And even if you've had a COVID-19 or flu vaccine previously, whether it was just a single jab to regular boosters, it's still important to stay fully protected. To find out more, search online for COVID and flu vaccines Peterborough.
Do you own a restaurant or takeaway? Cater Fair is an expert supplier of new and used commercial catering equipment. Visit caterfair.co.uk for quality equipment on sale at the lowest prices, or call us on 01733 310 115 or visit us at 11 Royce Road, Fengate, Peterborough.
You're listening to Peterborough's community radio, Salam Radio. Salam Radio. 106.2 FM.
Good afternoon. You are listening to Keep Women Talking, a show from Peterborough Women's Aid. My name is Mandy and I'm your host, and I have Sue with me.
Hello.
Hello. We're talking today about the impacts of domestic abuse on children, which is quite a heavy subject. So to lighten the load a little bit, we are asking you, because it's cold and wet and horrible out there, what is your favourite comfort food? So we want to hear from you. What do you snuggle up with on the couch, or dare I say eat in bed? Do you eat in bed, Sue?
I don't. I have a real thing about having crumbs.
I don't either. Okay, so you can ring us on 01733 602 133. Text us 07411 91062, or if you're watching us on Facebook, YouTube, X or Twitch, please do comment. What is your favourite comfort food? So, Sue, before the break, we were talking about the impact of domestic abuse on children, and you were saying that children can behave in all different ways when they've experienced the trauma of domestic abuse. But you also said that there are techniques that can help these children and young people. So I'm just wondering, what are they?
So there's a number of different ways that can help children manage those big emotions. I think one of the main ones, which is quite broadly talked about these days, is breathing techniques. So taking a slow breath in, holding it, and then a slow breath out. Doing that repeatedly helps the child to calm everything down within the body, helps their brain to kick back in and to have that conscious thought about how they're reacting. There's then other things that you can do. Tensing and relaxing the muscles can really help, or tensing and then shaking. Mm-hmm. Things such as tapping. So it's called bilateral movement. So
wow, bilateral movement. Okay.
So basically using both sides of the body. So tapping, drumming is a perfect example. It's really, really good to calm down your body. But anything like walking, running, knitting is also a really good bilateral movement that really helps the body to come down.
And this is all about when children experience this kind of overwhelming feeling, maybe trauma or something
any
like that.
Large emotion, any big emotion that they're feeling. So whether that's anger, whether that's sadness, whether that's anxiety, anything along those sort of lines can really help anybody, not just children necessarily, sort of to rebalance their body so that they can consciously think about what's going on and make a conscious decision about what to do next.
Okay. That's so it's really interesting, isn't it? Because it means that actually there are techniques that can help children recover, which is really, really positive.
That's it. And I think further down the line, when we continue in the conversation, we'll come on to more things that can help a child as they move forward.
Yeah. So to lighten the load a little bit today, we are asking quite a fun question, and it is, what is your favourite comfort food? We did have a caller, but the caller has gone. Maybe they're just too embarrassed to tell us what it is. I don't know. Maybe
I think there has been a few problems with the phone lines.
Okay.
So maybe it's still
call back. Call back, per anyone. But you please do let us know, what is your favourite comfort food? You can text us 074 111 91062. And if you're on Facebook or YouTube, just put a comment in there. What is your favourite comfort food?
That was really quick reading out those numbers, Mandy.
Was it super fast?
Slightly slower.
Sorry. The text number is... We've just got so much to talk about. We've only got an hour. The text number is 074 111 91062.
Lovely.
Thank you. Okay. So tell us a little bit more about the different broad ranges of behaviours that a child having experienced domestic abuse. Actually, tell me about one, Sue, and then because we do have our caller back, which I'm very excited about.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
So I talked about acting out and perhaps seeing aggressive behaviour, and then I went the other way and talked about freezing. Sometimes children can appear very withdrawn, very timid, and can be quite quiet. Now, obviously, you do get some children that are quieter than others, but I think we're talking about the extremes. And I think it's, even if a child's behaviour almost becomes a concern for you, it's always worth asking the question, what's happened?
Okay, so we're talking extreme withdrawal, we're talking maybe not getting involved with friends or groups or conversations. Are we talking sometimes, literally, I know we've worked with children that literally hide from people. They just can't handle that interaction.
Engage at all with anyone, whether that's their peers, whether that's adults. They just really, really struggle to engage. Okay. And like you say, in a young child, that may be that they cling on to their mum, who they do feel reasonably safe with, or they might feel very emotional. They might cry a lot. And they can generally be quite emotional and go from quite extremes of emotion. So one minute they may appear perfectly fine, perfectly happy, and the next minute they can be screaming and crying.
Okay. So what we're talking about then is kind of looking out for extreme behaviours, and I
think just unusual behaviours that you wouldn't expect in a child of their age.
Okay. So we are talking about the effects of domestic abuse on children, but to lighten the load, we are asking a question about your favourite comfort food. We have a caller who is desperate to get through, but our phone lines aren't working now. So if you're desperate to tell us, then please just text. Text us on 074 111 91062. And if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, X or Twitch, you can just leave a comment with your favourite comfort food. I am determined to hear from this person because they've called up 3 times now and I just want to know what it is.
As I said, we have got problems with the phone lines. I think they've been struggling over the last few days. So it'd probably be easier if you can manage to text or get onto social media and send a comment. That'd be perfect.
Yes, please do. So we are continuing our discussion on the impact of domestic abuse on children. And
it's a really, really tough topic.
It's a really tough topic.
And I think, like we spoke about earlier, very often if children haven't witnessed the domestic abuse or been in the same room while an incident has happened, a lot of parents believe that they haven't been impacted, they're not affected by it. But what a child sees, they can also hear.
Yes.
Or even if you think they're sleeping, it's not always the case. And even living within the household, they are still impacted by that domestic abuse.
And we often hear that, don't we, from perpetrators a lot. Well, they weren't in the same room.
Yeah.
They didn't see it. Yeah. And we know that children who are victims of domestic abuse often won't sleep because they're really scared about what potentially is going to happen to mum as well, aren't they?
Or they're very light sleepers. And that brings me on to talking about children who sometimes take on a role within the household.
Oh, okay, go on.
So this is really interesting, that children adapt. As we know, children are very easy at adapting. They're growing, developing all the time. So they adapt to the situation that they're living in and can sometimes take on a role within the household. So you might get a child who wants to be the peacekeeper.
Okay, describe that to me.
So you've got a child who wants to keep the situation as calm as possible. So they may try to negotiate between the parents. They might want to try and fix things. They also might take on the role of the informer. So they might be telling the perpetrator everything that's happened while they've perhaps been out at work or out the house to try and keep the peace, try and keep on good terms with both parents.
Okay. And why would they do that, Sue?
Because they want to get on. Children want a calm household. They want everyone to be happy within that household. And I think they try different ways to try and get to that point. I think if we get scientific, we can talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is, I think he was a psychologist that came up with children and adults need their basic needs to be met. So we're talking food, water, shelter. And it's only when those basic needs are met that you can go on to the next stage and can develop further.
So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's like a little bit of a pyramid, isn't it?
Yes.
But you've got to get the bottom bit.
Yeah, you've got to have those basic needs met before you can develop as a person.
Okay.
And as a child, you will try everything you can to get those basic needs met. Like a baby, for example, a baby cries to get those basic needs met because that's the only way they've got to communicate. And as a child gets older, they'll learn different ways to get those basic needs met.
And being the informer,
yes,
keeping the parents happy might be a way of...
That's it. It might mean that child gets a meal that day.
Mm.
It might mean that child might get a little treat.
Okay.
You know, and as children, we all know, like to be rewarded.
Yeah. So it's a real... it's like a pressure or a responsibility on that child, isn't it? Mum and dad's abusing mum, or, you know, it might be the other way around, that's fine. Dad's abusing mum, and my role is to try and keep the peace.
Yeah.
And for that child, they have to do that to get their basic needs met. Yeah. Because if mum, for example, is hospitalised through the abuse or unable to meet that child's basic needs for the abuse, that child is really going to struggle.
That's it. And sometimes the child becomes mum's protector. So, for example, we had a family where one of the children would walk behind mum when they were walking to school so that they could tell mum if dad was coming up behind them.
Wow,
so that they could pre-warn mum. So mum then obviously knew what not to say and what not to do in that moment to try not to antagonise the dad.
So there's a role for children in this about protecting and being mum's bodyguard and making sure that she's okay, and they feel that that's their job, which is huge for a young person, isn't it?
It is. And they can sometimes take on a very adult role, and then they miss out on the childhood development. Mm-hmm. So the playing, you know, and learning to play with siblings and peers goes out the window because their role is to keep mum safe or to keep calm within that family.
Wow. Okay, so we are talking about the effects of domestic abuse on children, but to lighten the mood a little bit, we are asking you a question, which is, what is your favourite comfort food? And we have a response. I don't know who this is from, but it said, this is a message for Keep Women Talking. My favourite comfort food is definitely roast beef, cooked by someone else.
It's always so much better when someone else does the cooking.
I do love a roast dinner, as long as it has mash.
Of course. I love a roast potato myself.
I do. I do actually like roast potato and mash on the same plate. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I do.
going to be all carved out.
And chips. Okay, so if what we're talking about has affected you, please do contact Peterborough Women's Aid on 01733 894 964. We actually do have a caller on the line. Fingers crossed this one's going to work. And we are asking, what is your favourite comfort food? So I am going to say hello, caller. How are you?
Oh, hi. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for listening to our show. What is your...
I just tuned in a little right in the middle of other things as well, but I just wanted to ring up and say, well done to all of you. I know that you've been in the limelight recently as well. And I just wanted to say thank you. Honestly, the awareness, that you're trying to raise within our community, it's wonderful, because there's so many people out there struggling, especially sort of South Asian households where, it's a normal kind of culture to brush everything under the carpet. And it happens a lot because there's poor ladies, women who don't even know there's help available. So it's just, honestly, you're doing a really great job, supporting these women and household and children especially. It's really sad, that the children are stuck in the middle of all this abuse. And unfortunately, they will, sometimes they carry this burden on throughout their whole lives, through adulthood.
Thank you so much for those kind words. And that is exactly what we're trying to do. We are trying to raise awareness. We are trying to promote what we do to communities that maybe won't, like you said, rightly said, won't reach out for help. Thank you so much for calling in. Before you go, can I ask you, what is your favourite comfort food?
Oh, my favourite comfort food? Oh, there's too many.
Lady after my own heart.
Can you pick one?
There's too many. I think my favourite, especially in this weather, will have to be, I don't know, it's the Asian roti called paratha that's made with the buttered fried sort of chapati. It's called a paratha.
That sounds good.
That does sound good.
Honestly, you must have it. So I'm sure the Asian women working with you, get them to make you.
I will absolutely get them to make me one. Yeah. They're amazing chefs. We have food in the office all of the time, don't we?
That's what you need with some Asian tea. That's what you need in this weather, a paratha and Asian tea.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for taking the time to call.
Really, no, that's okay. You're really welcome. Honestly, I just want to appreciate you lot all again. Honestly, it's something that much needed in our community, and also it's not just that the women know, the women are aware that there's an organisation there that they can reach out for help as well, and I think once families who who sort of create these situations and who are the abusers, shall I say, or individuals who are the abusers, once they're aware that there's organisations out there looking out and also are available for our women to reach out, that hopefully will kind of stop them, doing what they're doing as well. Hopefully, and hopefully the impact. Honestly, will be great on these women, on these children, on the whole household and the whole society as a whole.
Thank you so much, and we really do hope that this is just a small part of what we do being on this show, but we really do want to reach women that maybe wouldn't reach out to us, and we want to show them that there is a service here. We have specialist services at Peterborough Women's Aid, specifically for the South Asian community, specifically for the Lithuanian community. And we want those women, those victims, to be able to come forward and access our support. Thank you so much for calling in.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Nice
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
So there we go. I think we need to speak to the ladies on the Dahlia project.
Yeah, we do, to make us some amazing comfort food. I tell you what, I feel really warmed by that phone call, because we specifically came on Salam requested to do a show on Salam Radio, didn't we? Because we want to reach communities where domestic abuse potentially might still be a taboo subject, and it's not talked about in families, it's not talked about in community venues, but we know it goes on, and this is a massive issue.
And I think it's acknowledging that ladies from the South Asian community have more and more barriers to face to access that support as well.
They do, and we're actually going to have a whole show on the Dahlia project, which is our South Asian project, and a whole show on our Lithuanian project. We do have someone else has texted in, and they have put, "Thank you for such an amazing programme, and well done for talking about these sensitive issues that should be spoken up more often in our community. My comfort food is good old school cake. It takes me back to my school days, the best innocent, happy days." Oh, what a lovely text. What was your favourite food at school?
Oh,
I put you on the spot.
What was that? They always used to have that chocolate custard, didn't they?
Yeah, but it wasn't like proper chocolate.
No, it was the most bizarre thing ever, but it wasn't custard, but whatever that chocolate sauce was that they used to throw on everything.
Oh, yeah. My favourite was mash. No, I'm joking.
Oh, but did you have the mash which they used to dish out with an ice cream scoop and it had lumps in it?
That was Smash. Do you remember? Smash was in a packet, wasn't it? And you just added boiling water to it. It wasn't even potato, was it? I don't know what it was. Oh, we've got someone else. So we've got another We've got a comment from Anne. Her comfort food depends on her mood. I love cheese and crisp sandwiches. And if I'm tired, a lovely chili with guacamole and tortillas if I'm really hungry. I also love a cheesecake when I need a treat. Oh, my word,
Anne. I'm not sure this
is
a good choice because it's making me feel really hungry now.
Anne has literally just done starters, cheese and crisp sandwiches, main course chili, dessert cheesecake. That sounds like heaven, doesn't it?
It does. I love cheesecake as well.
We are talking to you. Thank you, everyone, for contacting the show. It's lovely to hear from women in our community. This is what this is all about. We are here and we are talking about the effects of domestic abuse on children. Sue, I want to ask you about the scapegoat. So we're talking about behaviours, aren't we, and the roles that children might take on if they are a victim of domestic abuse. Can you describe the scapegoat for me?
So yeah, the scapegoat is a child that may take the blame for the abuse.
Okay.
So they may have been told that it's because of them, that this happened because they did a certain thing, or they may just naturally feel it's their fault. It may well be that they were in the room at the time, and whatever they've said or what they've done has triggered the perpetrator to lash out or shout or behave in a certain manner. And then the child believes it's all their fault.
Okay.
And this is a really sad one, I always think, because that child takes that blame and that blame will sit with them for a really, really long time. And the slightest thing, they can then think it's all their fault.
And I suppose, if a child hears parents arguing and that child's name is brought up in the argument, you haven't put him to bed on time, or he's been naughty, or why isn't he being good at school? Da, 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 da.
That's it. And he hasn't eaten all his dinner.
Yes. And then that leads to abuse. That child is going to feel responsible, aren't they? Like it's their fault. If I had eaten all my dinner, Mum,
that's it. This wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, Dad wouldn't have hit Mum.
Yeah.
So it's my fault. When actually we know that is so wrong, and it's all people are in control of their own behaviours. But as a child, you might think that way. If I wasn't here,
that's very true.
Mum and Dad wouldn't be in an abusive relationship. And then that leads me to ask you the question. I know that you've talked to me before about children and young people having suicidal thoughts.
Yes.
Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, and it does happen. And children can get to the point of being really, really sad and really low mood. And particularly in older children, if they've been a victim of domestic abuse within the household for a long, long time, and they can't see a way out. They have no way out. they have no choices. So the low mood and the depression and the anxiety of living within that household can have a really terrible impact, and they can start to have suicidal thoughts. And like you just mentioned, they can start to think, well, if I wasn't here, mum and dad would perhaps be happier. I wouldn't have caused this. This wouldn't be happening if I wasn't here. And again, it's one of those signs that we have to keep a real clear eye out for.
Yeah. And one of the most disturbing things, I suppose, when we work quite a lot with children, and when you are with a child who is that sad that they might have suicidal thoughts, it's heartbreaking, isn't it? Because none of this is ever a child's fault.
It is. And like you say, the younger child, because we know suicide can happen in relatively young children as well. We're not necessarily just talking teenagers here. Is that they may not have the words for those feelings. Because very often, again, because of the cognitive development that may be much slower because of living in a domestic abuse household, and because they become on edge, their cortisol levels are high constantly, they may not be able to recognise those feelings and be able to verbalise those feelings. They may not be able to recognise the feelings in themselves.
So this has been a really tricky subject, and
it has, and there's so much more to it.
There is so much more to it, but we're running out of time, believe it or not. And I just want to mention, because we've had a few other people come through on our Facebook, and Gina has put, this is such a great subject which really needs discussing. So everyone is aware that children are affected within a DO household. Her comfort food is stew and dumplings.
Nice.
I literally hate dumplings.
Do you?
Yeah. I think it's to do with Kung Fu Panda and the amount of times I had to watch it with all three of my boys. The word dumplings now is just horrendous. We've also had Anne has put, this episode is so interesting. You guys are smashing it. Smashing it, not mashing it. Okay, so you have been listening to Keep Women Talking. Please do reach out to Peterborough Women's Aid if you need to, and we will see you in 2 weeks' time, where we will continue our discussions.
Stay tuned to Salam Radio.